Europe's climate policy has been absolutely disastrous. We have the natural gas to displace all of the Russian gas today. So I am bringing that message. We're ready to ramp up our deliveries to Europe. President Trump, yes, he's used tough love to try to bring Europe along to be a stronger partner together with us for peace.
Mr. Secretary, let's start with sanctions, all sanctions on Russia. The US is increasing the pressure on Europe, on NATO countries to completely stop buying Russian oil and gas. I mean, Europe has come quite some way, but there are some countries for which it's really difficult. I mean, what are you demanding? How quickly should they get out of Russian oil and gas?
Well, sooner is better than later. You know, top on President Trump's agenda, prosperity at home, peace abroad. Both of those are intimately tied to energy. If you can lower your energy costs and expand your energy supply at home, you lower the cost to consumers and citizens, you make it more competitive for businesses. That's a passion of his, it's a passion of mine. And when we come abroad, the goal with American energy is to be a friend supplier to our allies who have previously relied on adversaries like Russia in Europe. So we have the natural gas to displace all of the Russian gas today. So I am bringing that message. We're ready to ramp up our deliveries to Europe, ready to displace all of the Russian gas, oil and refined products as well. So we've had dialogues with multiple countries. There's some pipeline interconnection problems in Central Europe and Eastern Europe that make gas maybe a little more expensive than it should be. We want to work with our allies and friends to grow the capacity of those connections. So for example, in Slovakia, they can get more reliable, lower cost gas from the United States than from Russia. But look, we want to end the war. The European nations want to end the war. The driver of the war is President Putin. If we can reduce the funding to him, we can reduce his ability to fund the war machine. I think we all win with that.
I mean, the countries who are buying quite a lot of Russian oil and gas are Hungary and Slovakia. I mean, they are basically friends of President Putin. Is he going to apply some pressure on them so that they get out of Russian gas?
I think, well, they're European nations, so there's greater pressure to be applied here. But of course, I met with the Slovakian delegation yesterday. They're keen to move ahead with U.S. nuclear energy, U.S. natural gas. I think it's logistics. I didn't see any resistance there to getting off Russian energy supplies.
And I mean, if they don't do it quickly, I mean, do I understand it right? There will be no Russian sanctions before they get completely out, or will there be Russian sanctions?
Well, we've already started with Russian sanctions. We've led the way on that. President Trump, more than a month ago, raised dramatically secondary sanctions on India, one of the biggest buyers of Russian oil. The U.S. is trying hard to strangle Putin's ability to fund his war machine, but you only can do that when all the team plays together. And I think, look, Europe wants the same end we do. I think we're moving that direction. If we can both move faster, all the better.
If you read Russian press, they interpret the whole thing quite in a different way. They say Trump is actually setting conditions that nobody can fulfill, like all of NATO getting out of Russian oil. There's also Turkey buying a lot of it, right? So they will never fulfill it. So what it actually means, there will be no sanctions on Russia. It's just a way for the US to get actually out of this peace process. I mean, is that correct?
That sounds like Putin saying what Putin wants to hear. He's a master at manipulating his own press and, of course, manipulating his own people. You know, he's been selling falsehoods for 26 years. So no surprise that he's still doing that today. Absolutely not correct. There's no higher agenda for President Trump than to stop wars and conflicts around the world. The road to a more prosperous world and a more peaceful world is a world where the allies are linked together in trade, in military alliances, in particularly trade and energy, so that we can strangle the only source of power Russia has. That's it.
You're also demanding that European countries impose secondary sanctions. Trump was talking of 100% tariffs on China. I mean, this will basically be a trade war, right? You're demanding that Europe goes into a trade war with China?
This war, ending the Russia-Ukraine war, has proven hard to do. Look, it's on the European continent. If it was easy to do, I would hope the European nations would have done it themselves already. So his goal is to end that war. It's much easier to stop the trade in Russian natural gas than in Russian oil. Much bigger, much more visible infrastructure to move natural gas. So of course, as quickly as we can have their natural gas exports to allied nations to zero, that's the easiest way to put pressure on President Putin. You only can move gas in pipelines. He's got one pipeline going to the east to China. 5 or 7 years from now, we'll have a second one. But all the Russian gas that comes into Europe, if that's cut off, he doesn't have other pipelines to put it. He has LNG cargo ships. A lot of those are still coming into Europe. So that's the easiest way to put pressure on him. To stop oil flows out of Russia, that's much trickier. There's a huge shadow fleet. There's multiple oil pipelines. That's a trickier game to do. But for us to ramp up serious pressure, we've got to do it together. The European Union has stopped imports of crude oil, mostly stopped imports of crude oil, with the huge exception of Turkey. But a lot of Russian oil exports, it just goes to India and China. I mean, India, China, and Turkey. But the oil and gas, the oil that goes to India and Turkey is refined into gasoline and jet fuel and diesel, and it flows into Europe. Let's displace that. We're not going to be able to get it all, but let's get all we can, put all the pressure we can to end this war. But we got to do it together.
But you want secondary sanctions of 100% on China, on the whole of the China trade?
It is a way that would reduce Chinese exports of Russian oil. But a starting point is do everything that's possible easier than that. That is a place we may have to go to end this war.
Is the US actually prepared to put 100% sanctions on China? I think that they did it in April a little bit and then very quickly moved back because they saw the economic consequences of that, right?
We've tried multiple things, and we will continue to try multiple things. There's no magic bullet here. It's just the allies working together to find out what works. But it's definitely going to involve sacrifices from Europe and sacrifices from the United States to achieve it.
Is the interpretation right that actually it's not only about Russia, but it's also that the US wants Europe to get tougher on China?
Of course. Look, to make a peace and safer world, we need a strong United States, we need a strong Europe. President Trump is thrilled by the European nations agreeing to raise their defense spending. This is a huge step forward for peace in the world. We're coordinating at a larger level strategically on the military front, and same thing on an economic front. But there's not a magic bullet here. There's cooperation, partnerships, trying various things, and seeing what shrinks his economic power and what brings him to the table. You're right, we've tried things that haven't worked, and we've tried things that have worked. We're doubling down on what works and trying to find other tools that work.
You're talking about partnership of Europe and the US. I mean, the impression here in Europe is that actually we had a partnership for some 80 years, and that has changed in the last half year. There's a different tone. Europe is not sure. Is the US still its friend or is it not? Could you describe a little bit in which way does the US see Europe?
Absolutely as a friend. You're right, it's a change from the last 80 years. In the last 80 years, there was a lot of happy talk and not as great of a partnership as we could have had. Just because we said it was a good partnership doesn't mean it was. I've been traveling to Europe for 40 years. Fantastic. Look, the United States, we are children of the European continent. We are descendants of that. Of course, we've been close together in conflicts throughout time. But recently, the United States has invested enormously in a military. We've tried to be an enforcer of global peace and trade in the world, and all we've wanted is the Europeans to be our allies in that. If you looked carefully at European defense spending, readiness for battle or whatever, it's been disappointing. President Trump said that in his first term and he beat the drum. He wants allies. He's a businessman. Europe's been a little bit of a freeloader there. We've got a war right on the shores, a strong, militarily powerful Europe that had armed Ukraine. We wouldn't be in the conflict we're in right now. So President Trump, yes, he's used tough love to try to bring Europe along, to be a stronger partner together with us for peace. I mentioned the commitments on defense spending. These are hugely helpful. President Trump is thrilled with the commitments Europe has brought to raise their defense spending and be militarily strong with the United States. Of course, he'd love to see a booming, economically strong Europe as well. Think of the trade deal. The goal here is to reduce dependence on Russian energy supplies. Europe's had very little economic growth since the financial crisis. It was an economy as large as the United States 17 years ago. Today, it's dramatically smaller. That's European policy, European decisions, but a stronger, industrial, economically powerful Europe, that's better for the US, that's better for peace in the world. So I come here absolutely in peace and cooperation. I'm thrilled with the trade deal. We're going to grow the energy trade between the US and Europe massively. I think this is economically good for the United States. It's absolutely good from a geostrategic and peace agenda for Europe and economically for Europe. If we can lower the price of energy in Europe, bring a little common sense back into energy policy here, Europe will be stronger. Europe will be a greater force for peace in the world and a greater force for trade with the United States. It's the same thing President Trump was elected on in the United States. Our last president wanted to go the European direction, stop the production of this kind of energy and that kind of energy, driving only higher priced energy, infuriating our consumers, pushing our companies overseas. How are we going to win the AI war when we're strangling our energy industry in the United States? President Trump got elected to bring common sense back, to reverse that trajectory, and everything we can do to bring our friends and allies along that way, we think is in the best interest of everyone.
In the trade deal, I mean, Europe committed to buying 750 billion of US oil, gas, nuclear, whatever. That's quite a lot, and actually in Europe they think that would wreck European climate policy. I mean, do you want Europe to get out of its climate policy?
Well, that's Europe's choice, but Europe's climate policy has been absolutely disastrous. You know, electricity prices, even here in Austria, they're more than twice as high in the United States, and in Germany and the UK, they're 3 times as high as in the United States. What has that done? That's just made it more expensive for people to pay their bills. It's taken the large industrial companies of the UK, of Belgium, of Germany, and moved them overseas. If you move a large energy-intensive industry out of Germany and you move it to China, it's instead of powered by natural gas, it's powered by coal. Then you produce the products in China, load them on a diesel-powered ship, and ship them back to Europe. Is that green? Is that a climate policy? That's not a climate policy. That's a top-down control and a belief somehow that the world can run on wind and solar. Look, we have decades of proof. The math shows we can't do that. Today, wind, solar, and batteries are less than 3% of global energy after $5 trillion. You can't make a solar panel or a wind turbine without copious amounts of hydrocarbons. So yes, we want a European climate policy to be more reasonable, to be more sober. The biggest force for decarbonization in the planet and the United States has been the rise of natural gas. That's 25% of global energy from natural gas. That's a pathway to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase prosperity, and keep industries at home. Does that make more sense? I think it does.
So you don't think that it's necessary to do transition out of all hydrocarbons?
Well, 2 answers to that. One is the United States has reduced greenhouse gas emissions more than any other nation on Earth by far. But it's been market forces. It's been natural gas displacing coal by economic forces. And the short answer is we don't have replacements for hydrocarbons. The world is 85% of its primary energy from hydrocarbons today, the same as it was 50 years ago. 30 years of COP conferences, pleadings, demands for everyone. It's made no change in the global energy mix. It's not an easy problem to solve. In fact, I'll go on record and say President Trump will likely be the biggest driver of reduced greenhouse gas emissions we've ever seen. This is the growth of natural gas, the renaissance of nuclear. Those are 2 needle movers that actually can reduce greenhouse gas emissions without ruining power grids or without ruining industry. But those are for other reasons. You need to think about peace and national security. Those certainly trump incremental reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. But the best way for peace and prosperity, it turns out, is also the best way for greenhouse gas reductions.
Actually, I mean, this 750 billion, it's so much, and even experts are saying even if Europe tries, it's not possible to buy that much. I mean, would America be happy with, buying more, but not these?
It's an agenda to be aggressive and to go at it, and we'll revisit this in 3.5 years. We'll get to that 750 billion. It's displacing all Russian gas, it's displacing Russian oil and refined products, and it's starting the nuclear renaissance together, the United States and the European nations. And every nation I've talked to, almost every nation I've talked to here, is very interested in exactly that agenda. These will be commercial business deals that will be signed. I think it's quite achievable. It does require nuclear. It does require nuclear cooperation to get there. But heck, we've got recent signings of U.S. Building nuclear power plants in Poland, in Romania, and likely in Bulgaria. I think absolutely we'll achieve 750 billion, but it's a win for both sides. It's not one side winning and the other side losing. Trade's about winning both ways.
May I ask you something a little bit different, not as energy secretary, but as part of the Trump administration? I mean, we had this horrible murder of Charlie Kirk. I mean, you think political violence, is it worrying? Is it on the increase in the US?
It's absolutely worrying. It's absolutely on the increase in U.S. We see the same kind of political radicalism in Europe. I personally think this has come from drifting away from the values that defined European civilization and United States civilization. We believe in free speech. We believe in free interchange of ideas. We believe in market competition. We believe in a meritocracy and treating people for their individual merits, not their group identities. I think we've lost confidence in societies, the Western values that built Europe, that built the United States. And I think that's destructive. We have too many people that don't believe in those foundational values of our society. And so when a passionate, articulate defender of those values like Charlie Kirk, it's hard to debate and disagree with those values. And as Charlie Kirk did that, there's a rising people that have lost belief in the American values. It is dangerous.
But do you think this violence is just coming from one side? I mean, or is it like from both sides? Because we have murders
concerning across the spectrum.
I mean, what should the administration do? Clamp down on the, like Trump calls it, radical left, or try to heal this rift which is coming up in the US?
Trump is trying to restore American values and belief in American ideals. They did us well for 250 years, and they'll do us well going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.